In today's video, we'll go through about the current situation on the market, crazy pump that we had recently. I will show you my loans that I opened currently, and I will tell you what to do if you are not exposed to the market at this stage, or if you feel underexposed, and how I'm playing this situation as well. So let's start with Bitcoin. We basically had a surge from 43,000 to 51K in 1 week, which is basically just very, very crazy. And it's interesting that some people are saying that this dip that we had is basically the only dip that we will have currently, and we are going up only from this stage. I will share with you my opinion on the situation, how I'm playing the market as well. But it's very, very important to follow someone and to make sure that someone is voting with the money as well. Right now, I'm 50% not deployed into the marketplace. Maybe that's a mistake. Maybe it will lead to the fact that I would essentially be deploying later with me not being able to catch the pump moving forward as well. But this is how things are at this stage from my point of view. I also wanted to show several long positions that I have opened. What do I have currently is 3 longs opened with Aptos, with Sui and Ape. Aptos I was opening just recently, I think a couple of days ago. You can see that leverage is 5x here, but in reality it's only 3x because I basically have 5k margin with 50k position, right? Sui kind of the similar thing, but with Sui I was entering at 0.22 and it's doing great at this stage. So I have 28k in profit, and this is something interesting with Sui because initially I wanted to basically just close the loan at around $2 and then essentially just put the money into DYDX loan, right? And obviously, no one is sure what's going to happen with the market in the upcoming several weeks or months, right? And it might be a mistake that I am not taking profits at this stage. But I would probably want to hold this loan long term because I do believe that Sui can pull something out similar to Solana in the last cycle and can do like a 10x even from these numbers, even from 1.9. It's obviously going to take time. We'll probably see some dips and things like that. And I do think that if we are actually going to still have this major dip on the market to like 30K, 32K, 35K. From one point of view, it might be generational opportunity in order to get into the assets. From other point of view, I might get liquidated on the current longs as well, because I think it's 30K, 35K. It's quite easy for Sui to basically go below $1. From my point of view, what I will be doing here is just be adding more margin. So I would essentially be investing more stable coins in order to not get liquidated on the loan. In terms of this thing, I would probably want to just keep it for a long time, and with most of these tokens as well. I don't have exposure to them in my spot portfolio, and this is the way I like to get exposure to tokens. I'm able to save my liquidity at the same time, and at the same time I'm getting exposure to the asset as well, which is quite nice. We also have the chart of Sui that's open currently now, which is doing crazy numbers, and it also had a dip recently, and essentially after that it was able to recover, and right now we are almost at $2 per token. It had this dip from 1.5 to $1 where a lot of people, I believe, sold, guys that were basically entering earlier. And as mentioned in the previous videos, that's a classic changing hands example from the market maker. He needed to get these people out of this rocket in order to be able to push it higher, because the only way how the asset can be pushed is if there are no irrelevant players in the asset at this stage, right? We had people who were buying from 0.4 levels, and at 1.6, market maker made sure they would be shaken out with essentially dumping the price of the token to $1. And we're surging up from here. So probably would also have a dip somewhere here as well. So people that entered maybe at $1, 1.22, like we had a wall of buy orders here, right? They would essentially take profits here because they would understand that they might have closer to a 2x at that stage. And as far as you can understand, the amounts of funds that were entering somewhere here, they were quite larger than the amounts of funds that were entering Sui at level 0.4. Just because of the fact people essentially had more conviction about the token, about the project, and the more conviction you basically have, the more funds you're entering. And on top of that, you kind of want to cover your mistake with money as well. Because if someone was entering Sui at that stage, they probably understand and knew that the token was at 0.4 just like a month ago, and they want to cover the mistakes with money. Therefore, kind of invest with the amount of funds that would give them the same amount of tokens that they were able to get if they, for example, would be buying when the token did not pump yet. So to provide you an example with numbers, if you bought Sui for 5K at 0.4 level and at 1.4, you would basically have 20K. So someone might enter for 20K here and get a similar amount of token that someone who just invested 5K at 0.4 level. This is essentially a classic example of covering your mistakes with money, right? And it's actually been done in business quite a lot of time. And if you don't have efficient processes in different departments and things like that, that means that you're probably closing certain issues with money. It's always great to have the option like this, but you may have your competitors that are working on improvement of the processes. Therefore, they're not spending funds on essentially covering these mistakes. They're spending funds probably to acquire more customers or to deliver more value to the customers. Therefore, they outperform you on the marketplace, whilst you are spending money to cover your mistakes in terms of value, in terms of processes and things like that. Because in some cases, for example, even if the client is not happy, you can provide him with a discount, right? That's the example also of closing your mistake with money. If you're providing discount to the client that's not happy. But if you're able to deliver proper services in the first place, that would essentially mean that you do not have to close any mistake with money and probably would essentially make money on top of that, right? ApeCoin loan doing quite well. It's the largest margin that I basically have in terms of these loans, 20K here, and we are 6K in profits, but I do believe it's just started to move right now. I will show you the chart of ApeCoin right away. Yeah, so speaking of ApeCoin, I was essentially entering at 1.42 bucks, so somewhere around here, right? And it's interesting, it's kind of surging up from these levels. So from February 7, it's just up, and we finally have a breakout. So I'm not sure like where this thing would essentially go. The main reasoning for me, and I was showing it in the previous videos as well, and I actually was publicly sharing this loan on my Patreon page. We didn't make a lot of money, obviously, at this stage, but I do plan to hold this long term, and I do think it might do very, very well. And one of the main reasons for that is basically because Andreessen Horowitz invested $500 million into ApeCoin. So that's just the only thing that I have to hear in order to basically enter this long position, essentially at my levels when I was entering. And the other part is that the token is still in the accumulation phase. So it didn't pump much. It was not breaking out of the accumulation. So I think it's actually going to be a very, very nice long-term position in terms of this token and this project as well. And you kind of might say that like narrative of metaverse is dead and things like that, but it's quite alive in BTC and ordinals. And I think it will essentially get revived from BTC ordinals and Apple Vision Pro and all the things that are happening on the market currently. I do think that the metaverse is the next wave in terms of the evolution of how consumers are essentially digesting content on the web. And that's something that we will definitely have. Therefore, I do think that projects like this might do very, very well. I also entered the loan on Aptos, and the main reason in there is because market makers are the same as SUI, investors are the same as SUI, chart is quite similar to SUI as well. It's also in the accumulation zone at this stage, so I do believe that Aptos should run, and it didn't run much from the lows as well. I think at the lows it was like $6, right now it's $9. And that's basically the main reason of me entering into this position as well. But as you can see, the size of this loan is quite small. DYDX, something that I actually wanted to loan as well from my end. I was thinking and talking about it 2.5 bucks. His initial plan was basically just wait for SUI to get to $2, take all the profits out and put them into the loan on DYDX, right? Currently, I will probably be entering with my stable coins just because of the fact I'm still not fully exposed into the market. And essentially one of the plans that I'm planning to use in order to even add exposure if like we would see this rocket like, you know, surging up and things like that, and no one would be able to get in, and I would still sit in like 50% in the stable coins. The things that I'm planning to do is, in the first place, to enter these conservative loans to basically make sure that it will be hard for me to get liquidated. I would always have margin to add in order to not get liquidated. And with the loans, I would basically be able to acquire more exposure with the lower amount of funds that I would essentially be putting in. And I would be able to acquire more exposure from the smaller movements from the tokens as well, which is very, very interesting from that point of view. And I would also mostly be planning to enter loans on the tokens that are still in the accumulation zone, that still didn't pump much, because there are always such instruments on the marketplace, such tools on the marketplace that you can use in terms of different assets, different tokens as well. And the second thing, I would be planning to participate in IDO, in private pre-sales and things like that. This is essentially one of the ways for me that I see on how I can deploy the capital that I still have left in terms of the things that would be happening on the marketplace. There are a bunch of people, essentially, if you're in crypto, you might just connect with them. They have access to private rounds, and you might basically just communicate with them if you like the projects and things like that. There are obviously launch pads that you can get into as well, which is a bit more decentralized from that point of view, right? And I would also be mostly planning to enter private IDOs and pre-sales with the projects that have a quick vesting schedule, max 2 years from now, because I basically think that we probably have maybe 1.5 years of this bull market if the bull market started, right? Essentially in terms of the market, in terms of what I think would happen next. So we still hear a lot of people that are telling that we should see this deep to 32, 35, 38K. And I can definitely say that me personally, I was more leaning towards that opinion just because it's convenient to me, right? Because I still have at least 50% of the portfolio not deployed at this stage. Therefore, it's quite convenient for me to see better prices on the marketplace and discounts because I do want to get in. Right? At the same time, I do understand that we might have a scenario where we will just surge up, and in a certain way, it will be a max pain scenario because recent deep to 38K, a lot of people, they were calling for lower deep. A lot of people, they essentially were waiting for lower. And a lot of people, they were not entering heavily into the market as well. I was also not entering heavily into the market at that stage. I've done some buys, but not as much as I basically wanted in the first place. So it's very, very interesting that max pain scenario right now for the current participants of the market is just to surge the whole thing up, create a bunch of FOMO, let these people enter and just dump the whole thing. That's kind of the best because this way, all the bears that are waiting for the dips and things like that, they might become emotional. Some of them might become emotional. Some of them will enter and then essentially they will get liquidated or they will get trapped, which is exactly something that manipulator would want in order to basically have small amount of people on the market in order to be able to do with the price of any assets the things that he wants to do. I do think at this stage there is 30-40% chance that we would essentially see this dip, maybe even 50%, and 10% chance that we'll go to $10,000. I know it's crazy. I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory. I do believe that this might happen only in two cases: financial crisis, the global one, or major war in Eastern Europe or Middle East. I do live in the Middle East, although I'm from Eastern Europe in the first place. Therefore, I have certain insights from the borders and from the things that are happening. Very, very interesting. A lot of people still await major crash in 2024. Despite this fact, I'm 50% allocated to the market at this stage. I have longs opened, which I'm ready to add margin if it will essentially go down. And I have stable coins on the side in order to enter the positions that I would want to enter if we would essentially see this dip. And I think that most likely scenarios are us essentially surging up from these levels, also with corrections, but probably with corrections from larger levels, or essentially us seeing a dip to 30K and then basically just up only in terms of the things that will be happening on the marketplace. Well, this is pretty much it. I've shared my opinion and the things that are happening on the marketplace from my point of view, how I am playing the current scenario. Maybe it's not the best position to have. The best position obviously is to enter at the dips in the bear market and just sit and just make sure you're doing nothing, because actually doing nothing is also doing something, and doing nothing by itself is very, very hard. And I would say it's the most important skill in investing as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like and subscribe if you like the content, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.